Wonderful! You're back for the second video. And in this video, I will be designing the jointery that I will use for the model, as well as working on smaller details, such as the wheels, the axle, and the hook for the launcher. Before I start working on anything in SOLIDWORKS, first I'll go into my OneNote app and start making sketches for what I plan to do. I find this helps me to organize my thoughts, and it's a nice and easy way to start on the project, and it helps you not get stuck in just the thinking phase of what I'm going to do. What I wanted to do for this bow's jointery was to take half of this member and make it a part of the bow part, and the area where these two meet will be where the joint goes. I forgot to address in the previous video how the axle that runs through the frame for the launcher will be prevented from sliding out during operation. To fix this problem, I'll bulge one end and put a hole in the other, and through that hole I'm going to put a wedge that sticks out. The next thing is wheels. I want my wheels to be functional and removable from the frame. When I started thinking about my designs for the wheel, my first thought was how Lego does it. And I figured if it's good enough for a multi-billion-dollar company, it's probably good enough for me. The design that Lego uses looks something like this, and what I'm trying to draw is supposed to look like this. And finally, I'll be designing the hook that goes on the launcher. It's pretty simple, there's not so much to say about it. It's just a hook that the string will go around so that the launcher can do the launcher things with the bow and the string and it will throw the object. Yep, it's just a hook. Alright, so this is the third day I've been working on this portion of the project, and I just gotta say, that day sucked. And it's because about an hour and a half through my modeling session, I realized that my member thickness was way too thin. That meant that I needed to redo all my models and make them thicker. I consider them to be too thin just because they looked too thin, and I was just kind of going for like a certain ratio and aesthetic to the model. So there's not a lot of math behind it, just as I said, just looks too thin. And although this is a pretty major setback, I would not really consider this to be a waste of my time. I spent a lot of this time gaining more experience in SOLIDWORKS and working through the process of designing something. The models will be mostly the same, but because I didn't do a great job of designing the models in the first place, I'm going to have to redo them completely. So right here is where I start modeling my bow to frame jointery. But later, I realized that this design is completely garbage, and these are the following reasons. First, this bit right here is way too thin, and I fear that it would not hold up to the stress of cyclic loading. The second reason is that I think while trying to print this object, that it would require too much support material, and if I could avoid that, I would like to. The third and final reason is because I am using a tapered dovetail. The angle of the taper would cause the dovetail to completely disappear towards the end of what is supposed to be this joint. It would be a waste of space, and I just believe I could do it completely better. Yeah, so like I said, here comes the moment of realization. This is really where I went, oh man, my idea was absolutely garbage. I'm going to need to scrap everything I just worked on. But it's a good thing I caught it at this point and not at the printing stage. So I'll take that as a win. Oh no. So right here, I'm kind of just drawing out what I had in my head when I was making these changes. So instead of the long member right here being where we integrated the bow and the frame, I chose that this spot right here would be a lot more beneficial. This is one for the ease of assembly, and two, to have a less complicated first layer when I print. I don't know much about printing, but what I do know is that thin things printed on the first layer turned out horribly. Anyways, as you can see on the bow end, that's where we have the actual dovetail joint itself, and it just slides into the socket on the frames. So right now you're looking at me complete all the changes that I outlined previously in the video. I meant to start them a lot sooner, but I got sidetracked with the bow to frame connection. So I'm just completing everything like I said I was going to do with the aforementioned changes. So that would include the axle, making the wheel, and making the wheel axle thingy. I don't really know what to call it. Unfortunately, as I said earlier as well, while making all these parts, I realized that my member thickness was just way too thin and that I'd have to pretty much start everything over. Personally, it's kind of amusing to watch the moment when I realize I made my mistake. Right here. Yep, I just shake it off and I go back to work. I mean, it kind of sucks when you realize that the last 9.5 hours were partially wasted making models with incorrect dimensions, but I took this as an opportunity to improve my models so that they would be easier to make changes to in the future. Also, it took me a bit for it to look aesthetically pleasing, but ultimately I'm happy with the supporting triangle to length ratio that I achieved here. Last time I made the tapered dovetail joints for the frame, I did so incorrectly, and if I went through with the printing, it would have not fit together when I would try to do so. Again, another mistake that I'm glad to have caught, and I only would have caught it because I had to remake my model. Anyways, a part of me doing this correctly meant that I had to put these slots in the frame to make way for the tapered dovetail joints. Oh, and because I had to make the frame thicker, I figured I might as well try and get away with a bigger axle. So therefore, I also had to design a bigger wedge and a bulge, and I just had to redo all of it, which was just fantastic. Even the wheel axle thingy, which I didn't end up showing here because I'm doing it later, but I'm gonna have to redo it all. And this is the part that defeated me. Probably the simplest thing that I've worked on all day. Making the dovetails was just, man, it was horrible. The program was not doing what I wanted to do. I mean, it probably means it's my fault, but just nothing was cooperating or handling the way that I wanted it to do. We're getting these really awkward gaps at the back, and seemingly nothing I would do would fix it. So I just took the rest of the day off. I accidentally took a very extended break. During that time that I took off, I got a new job and I moved to a different city. And so 26 days later, I went back to my computer to finish up this video and the project. Sometimes life gets in the way of your goals and what you want to do, but you just got to remember to refocus and zero back in. Anyways, what I realized was that these lines here were making the cutouts there, and when I tried to extrude the drawing, it would make those random holes, which makes sense because that's what I'm telling it to do. The fix was to extrude that blockier bit of the support first, and then to make the tapered dovetails, and then to extrude those. There's probably a better way to do it, but that's just what I thought of. Anyways, right here I'm just adding the female end of the joinery for the updated model. Next, I attempt to make the model for version 2 of the Catapult. I only made the right-handed side of the frame, so I just mirrored it over to avoid doing extra work. While I was trying to mate everything together, the program was just absolutely losing its mind, and it was throwing up a whole bunch of error signs. I have no idea why it was doing this. In the end, I did my best to get the model all together. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it as functional as the previous one. Just SolidWorks was just not having it with me. So yeah, basically all that's left for me to do is to start printing this thing. I gotta get a slicer program going so I can make the layers, and then that's it. But I think instead of making this a 3-part series, I'll probably split up the printing process into a bit more videos, because I suspect it's going to take much longer. Anyways, thank you for watching to the end. I'm really looking forward to finishing this project, and I appreciate your attention. Have a good day.